Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, a researcher and author. His name is Bill Taylor. And if you're watching this on YouTube, X, or Rockfin, you will see his website. It's D-State News. And he does a lot of different research on many different subjects. We talked 2 to 3 years ago, I think, about his inquiry into this really interesting island that's on the Chesapeake Bay that merely the public doesn't know much about. I certainly never even heard of it. But Robert Mueller lived there and has all these connections to what might be called the deep state, or the kind of legacy influencers around DC that may not actually be in the public, but people who meet. I think there was a Rockefeller, maybe Lawrence Rockefeller was there too. But and he can talk more about that. But it was a really interesting show, and it was really super unique information that I've never heard anywhere else. But today we're going to talk kind of on the similar vein, and I've titled this talk "The Family Connections of the Deep State." And so these are some of the things, these kind of connections between families. We were kind of chatting about that in the pre-show, kind of like the privileged life of Robert, aka Hunter Biden, but this is more kind of on that same vein. So I'm glad to have him back. So Bill Taylor, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back. Yeah, and I'll just mention that the last time I was on, we spoke about Gibson Island. And it said it's a Chesapeake Bay. It's about halfway between Baltimore and Annapolis, and I believe it's the wealthiest zip code in Maryland. But the island's got a very interesting history, and you can really find out a lot about these deep state families by just studying the history of the island, which was really first developed in the 1920s. Yeah, the Mueller family there, going back to 1928. You have the DuPonts. You have the Rockefeller.
So Rockefeller was there. That's right.
It was. Now I'm going to get the name wrong. One of the Rockefeller cousins, starts with a G. Godfrey Rockefeller? Godfrey.
That sounds right.
Godfrey Rockefeller. Bob Woodward used to live there. Felix Morley, who was kind of interesting because I believe it's his nephew is Jefferson Morley.
Wow. So I didn't know Jefferson Morley had a connection to that. Interesting. I've had him on my show like 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah. Any number of other the CIA figures, Bagley, Pete Tennant Bagley. It just the names go on. There's only 300 or 400 families on the island, 150 houses. So everybody's going to know each other at some point.
Right. Super exclusive. Right. Super exclusive.
Super exclusive. There used to be there is a guard station, because there's only one way in and one way out, and it's on a causeway. So it's an island attached by a causeway. And
it's a perfect place to have secret meetings with your friends in the clubs. People talk about I just did a show about the influence of foundations, but a lot of researchers miss these kind of islands and interesting places where these guys meet. The same thing happened in the JFK assassination. They went to the Wrigley Island. There was like a connection there. Okay. And then it was the Paynes went to Wrigley Island with some elite kind of family. Next thing you know, she's picking up Oswald in New Orleans and going to Dallas.
Right.
Really something else.
Yeah, there's a number there. There's Nashua, I believe it's called, which is the Forbes Island up near Connecticut. I'm from New Jersey. I'm reporting from New Jersey Shore. And we do have the towns here, which have had a lot of wealth: Rumson, New Jersey, Spring Lake, New Jersey. But there's multiple ways in and out, so I don't think you get really the seclusion that you would get on an island like Gibson Island.
Right, it's just famous, like Jekyll Island. That's where they plotted for the Fed. So these are really interesting power bases in the U.S. that you never, ever would read about in a newspaper.
And I had never heard about Gibson until Robert Mueller came along to start with the Russiagate investigation, and that's what really got me interested in the whole premise of these deep state families being multi-generational operators, for the various deep state, either businesses, legitimate businesses in some instances, legitimate foundations, but also secret societies and conspiracies. I actually, I have a broader idea that, even our most recent conspiracies, if you want to call it maybe the COVID hysteria conspiracy or Russiagate and other type of conspiracy, they all, could, in many instances, I could find a relative back in a JFK assassination conspiracy. Even going further back all the way to World War I. But you do find these intelligence / criminal families involved in current conspiracies, and then if you look into their family tree a little bit, you find them in 40 or 50, 60 years ago, with the JFK assassination. That's where a lot of them trace almost. There seems to be some sort of possible connection in that there would be I believe, if a family could be trusted for one type of event, say the JFK assassination, they kept their mouth shut for 60 years. Well, then you promote them, and you treat it like a mafia family. You keep everything in the family, so that so the loose lips don't sink, the actions of the syndicate, and in return, the children of the say JFK conspirators get promoted and can form their own power base decades later.
Right.
Mueller was one. There's definitely connections to the JFK assassination through the Mueller family. A lot of people don't know this, but Robert Mueller's first cousin was Richard Bissell, the CIA director of plans during the Kennedy administration, and he's been widely suspected of having something to do with the JFK assassination. There's also a couple of other connections in there with respect to Robert Mueller's father, Robert Mueller II. His work that he did for DuPont, which was believed to be in the radioactive or nuclear metals side of the business. So if you're a subscriber to the idea that at least some of the Kennedy assassination was related to the misappropriation of weapons grade uranium especially from Apollo, Pennsylvania, then there's a very good possibility that Robert Mueller's father was involved in that.
Right. And I don't know if people know this, or maybe you're not familiar, there was something in Georgetown called the Georgetown set, right outside of DC, but also kind of power base elites. And Bissell was part of that. So he's networked with all these other characters, total characters who were definitely involved in the JFK assassination. Tracy Barn, and just all these other guys that we can go through with whole list. But so many important people: James Angleton, Cord Meyer, Harriman, Milt Dulles, McCloy, who's on the Warren Commission. So,
right, they have these. If you remember your Quigley book, it's all these concentric circles, and they're all interlap. It's like a Venn diagram of conspirators with the Georgetown set, and then you have the Gibson Islanders. They all seem to find each other, and of course I think it's deliberate because they're criminal families, and they can only associate with other criminal families. But along the lines of other families that we see today, or names that we see today that if you look back long enough, you could find them in the 50s and 60s conspiracies. There's Mayor Bill de Blasio and the Wilhelm family. Very interesting with the de Blasio, and you might have to be an East Coaster, New York region to appreciate the amount of hysteria and paranoia he tried to put the area through during COVID. It was just one disaster after another in his city at the time, and he was a big promoter of lockdowns and vaccines and anything else you could think of to sort of promote the idea that everybody's going to die from COVID unless you do what he says to do. But if you look past, look at his family tree. His father and his uncle were both CIA. Father and uncle were involved in the 1953 coup in Iran, which replaced the Shah.
Right, Mossadegh, Operation Ajax, it was called. Yeah,
right. And his mother was even also in the CIA. Actually, his uncle George, wound up writing ghostwriting the memoirs of the Shah in 1961 at the behest of Richard Helms. And so you have these deep connections. Yeah. If you watch De Blasio, you would think he's a bloviating, blowhard, basically, during the whole COVID mess. But there was a method to his madness, and he's not necessarily the buffoon that he portrayed himself on.
And as a card carrying leftist too, right? But still, exactly. Huge deep state connections. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
It makes me think of like Ted Cruz too, like his dad. His are all around the JFK assassination,
right?
And it earned the family their cred, right? And their inquiry into politics and the best schools, maybe even into Harvard. Who knows? I don't know what his real academic pedigree is. I'm not sure.
It's you play ball, then you get rewarded, and it doesn't really matter what side of the aisle you're on. Though you do see it probably more with the Democrats, especially in a higher leadership position, I would think. Although certainly Cruz is suspicious, McConnell is of course suspicious, but another one from my area where you can really trace the lineage back from the current conspiracy, say the COVID conspiracy, to the past, back to JFK, is my Governor Murphy. His wife's family was very very connected to, or I would say very, but I would say apparently connected to the Baltimore Mafia and the Norfolk Mafia, and she had an uncle, First Lady Tammy Murphy. She had an uncle who was a Teamsters attorney during the height of the Hoffa era. And the uncle actually shows up in the FBI files, the JFK FBI files, as having provided a reference for what I would call the second patsy, a gentleman named Malcolm Jerry Hoy, 22 years old, shows up in Dallas a couple months before the event and disappears a couple weeks after. The FBI finally caught up with him. And Jim, to make a long story short, if you read his FBI file, he definitely comes across as the type of guy who you could definitely pin a lone nut job on. One day he's telling the FBI that he saw the shooting. The other day he's at the movies. Conflicting stories, all around. But the main point is that this relative of Tammy Murphy was the one who gave him the reference, reference to essentially move to Dallas and get a job at the GM factory. It's that's, and of course Governor Murphy was another one who played up the whole hype and hysteria around COVID in the spring of 2020. So
not all the state people did play it up, right? Because Florida certainly didn't, and
there's really only Texas. Yeah, it was just five governors, five or six: New York, New Jersey, Connecticut,
California,
Michigan, California, and the Michigan woman.
Gretchen, was it Whitmer?
Gretchen, yeah.
They
all were the ones who really did all this. It was strange.
Yeah, very strange. A lot of sketchy people too. I mean, to say the least.
Right.
But it makes me think, like when you say Baltimore mob, I mean Pelosi comes to mind, right? It's her.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great connection. They were mobbed up from very early on, and I believe the Irishman addresses it or hints at the idea that there was a Baltimore connection to the JFK assassination. And I haven't seen it's a long movie, so I'd have to
Right, but
watch.
I think almost every, just like you said, if you played ball, you survived. And those who
Right.
kind of went against it either had their reputations ruined, their careers ruined, their
Right.
family ruined,
Yeah.
driven insane, or died. There was a cleanup job. The coup didn't just involve killing Kennedy. There was a huge hit list after, and people who were looking a little too close got in real trouble.
Right. And I find these strange deaths all the time. I mean, just to touch on that subject a little bit, there was the mayor of Dallas, Earl Cabell, and then his brother was the CIA head, General Charles P. Cabell. They had a brother that died 6 months later. I don't think I've ever seen that mentioned anywhere else.
Wow.
There was one of the more interesting ones. It's just a coincidence, but there's in the RFK assassination, one of his entourage, Tatlock, his name was Tatlock, he dies in a car accident, maybe about a year later, single car accident outside of Washington, D.C. The reason I found his name is because there was an article about his sister who on 9/11 worked for wasn't Federated. It was a fiduciary trust on the 82nd floor, 85th floor of the World Trade Center. She was flying to see Warren Buffett on the morning of the planes hit. So she escaped certain death by being on an airplane going to see Warren Buffett, which is also where George Bush flew to that day, off at Air Force Base in Nebraska. And I always thought that was pretty strange that this woman decided to take the day off. And her whole company, I think they might have, fiduciary trust might have had that. I think they lost 95% of their employees that day.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
there's some people who survived have very strange stories.
Yeah.
Like it's very curious. I think the guy from Family Guy, I forgot, same kind of person,
Right.
went to an elite prep school like all these other guys, elite Eastern prep school, misses his flight. He survived. Oh, what a happenstance. Wow, what a shock. You see those strange kind of things like that. And it's interesting, like it's a clique or a syndicate. I think that Americans don't realize how much it's almost like the Sub Rosa syndicate. There's so much of that going on, especially Newsom. He's totally connected to the Getty family.
Right.
So
not to sidetrack, but I believe that Americans don't really pay attention to genealogy or their family trees. The normal middle class American, just not. I don't know who my third or fourth cousin is, because I don't plan on marrying them at any time. But I think that some of these elite families, since it is largely a criminal enterprise, they do pay a lot of attention to third and fourth and fifth cousins and whether to keep this business in the family or not. So there's never really the realization that people are keeping track of this just because the normal American wouldn't.
And they have something in the East Coast that people from other parts of the country may not realize, the social register, right? So they all know who's going, like marrying each other, and the Daughters of the American Revolution or the May Pilgrim Society, all these things, these people who trace themselves back that maybe other parts of the country wouldn't treasure or mind. Definitely, it's a kind of an elite practice, like who you married and breeding and preserving wealth from the family. That may not be as middle class as
and keeping secrets. It's just keep the family secrets, because a lot of these families are old opium money, and you almost wonder if they're still not using still on a take. But I mean, those are a few of the more well known. One last one two more I'll just mention. James Comey is kind of interesting. His grandfather, and I've never been able to find out too much information. His grandfather was Yonkers chief of police in the 1950s, which I always thought was interesting. If you know your Son of Sam history, there's probably more to that. And I know that Oswald's gun, I believe, passed through Yonkers at one point. It went through several import-export businesses. and I believe one was in Yonkers. And then finally, a pretty famous upper class name is Auchincloss, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or Auchincloss. There's the person who was right behind Fauci, one step lower than Fauci, all through the pandemic, was Dr. Hugh Auchincloss, and he was actually made temporary director of the I guess the NIH, is it? Well,
Something NIAID, one of those.
yeah, that's what I believe it is. And that's a very powerful, old money type name, and you can trace that Auchincloss name to all kinds of people, like the Amory family,
Bundy's, right? McGeorge
Bundy,
Bundy, yeah.
Jackie, Colonel House.
Right, Jackie Kennedy was an Auchincloss, right? Wasn't that her mom's?
Yeah, that's her mother's maiden name.
Yeah, so.
But so Hugh was right in there. It's that family,
Right.
the same family,
incredible.
which is not really, if you believe that there's some sort of eugenics agenda, to suggest that there's these powerful families might still be involved, because he had a very high position, dealing with sort of the policy of how COVID should be treated and who should get the vaccine. Actually, very disturbing.
Super disturbing. Super disturbing. Like, a lot of people miss these guys, and a lot of times they place themselves behind the people in the public eye, and sometimes those people are even more powerful.
Well, I don't doubt that that's a strategy. Yeah, you're not the top guy. You're not the Fauci who's in front of the cameras every day. You're the guy right below Fauci, who's probably making most of the important decisions. But he's definitely not doing press conferences.
Right.
But I mean, I would imagine Fauci's, for the most part, is the face, and he'll probably take most of the blame too.
And got paid out. He got paid out hundreds of millions, like some of the stuff he did just fine, and he seemed to be okay with it. Like, I think they find these kind of sociopaths who will sell anybody out, and he's like, I mean, he's like at Georgetown now, right? That's where Tragedy and Hope's what is it, like, taught. And he's not even a Catholic. He doesn't have he left his Catholic faith, but he's at a Catholic institution, and he oversaw the COVID disaster, just a catastrophe from beginning. I think it's intentional, but it's catastrophic for the people, So it's
so that essentially brings us to to Hillary, which has always interested me. Under the idea that Pelosi's not there because of her smarts and good looks, and that Phil Murphy is not there because he's a bright guy from Goldman Sachs, or de Blasio is there because everybody loves his charming personality. The question for me is, how did Hillary, this supposedly middle class girl, high achiever from in nondescript suburb of Chicago, rise to such power and prominence? And if you think about it, she's really not even that smart. Maybe ambitious, but plenty of people are ambitious and smarter. Where did she come from? What did the deep state see in her to sort of put her in these positions year after, decade after decade? Beginning all the way with Watergate, which is, you might be young and incompetent, but it is something nice to have on your resume as you sort of you grab power. Through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now up to the present. So
she's like Bill. Like, they're both very similar, very privileged, weird kind of gilded life. Like, Bill's history is strange too, just like hers.
Yeah,
hers is fictional. Well, I mean, we were talking in the pre-show. What she says in public is a bunch of baloney,
Right, but but why her? Why them? I mean. You get, like, I could see with Pelosi, if her father's a mayor of Baltimore, she's sort of got the pedigree already, and he was a congressman, so he might be a crooked congressman, but you sort of you get a first look if you're Nancy Pelosi. But Hillary Clinton and Bill, for that matter, they don't really have that pedigree of either fabulous wealthy family or dynastic political family, but they do come out of sort of nowhere, to become president and almost president, within the past 30 years. So, I mean, this is where sort of things get speculative, but also interesting. If you ever look for information on Hugh Rodham Clinton, I've looked through the newspaper archives pretty seriously, and it's very tough to find anything on this on Hugh Rodham.
Right. His original name was Radinsky. I think somebody found that out. So he
really?
anglicized his kind of Eastern European Jewish name. I think that's really what he was. Yeah. He might be much more close to Jack Ruby and the Chicago mob than people realize.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where the sort of the research starts to go. First of all, the archives seem to be purged of any mention of his name before 1992. I mean, according to Hillary, he did run for local public office at various times in the 50s or 60s, maybe even early 70s. So you would think, if the archives haven't been purged, you should see some mention of his name and at some chicken dinner somewhere. I think maybe he's running for alderman. Even in a tiny Chicago suburb, and it wasn't tiny at all. You should see his name pop up, especially at a time when there's probably 3 or 4 local papers covering all kinds of things. But it's not there. She mentions pretty proudly in her bio that her father owned a fabric company that sold basically upholstery, draperies, and the things for the home. What I thought was interesting, what sort of caught my attention in reading about that, was the name of the firm. It's called. This is where I started to speculate, but the name of the firm is called Roderick, which I thought was a little bit unusual. I had to look up what's a Roderick, because I was looking for a partner or some sort of financial sponsor, because the Roderick doesn't really flow from Rodham or Radinsky or anything. He just kind of shows up in the 1950s with this firm, Roderick. And it turns out Roderick does have an interesting origin. If you're a conspiracy guy like myself, at least, Roderick is the Turkish form of Rodriguez, and Rodriguez. There's a lot of Rodericks in Turkey because of the expulsion of the Sephardic Jews in 1492. A lot of them went to the Ottoman Empire, and they set up shop in the textile business, which was their bread and butter business.
Interesting.
Either manufacturing or brokering between, Silk Road plants or factories. So I had to sit on that for a while because I wasn't making any progress with Roderick. But it did lead me to consider that also from that area you have the sort of phenomenon, the 1600 phenomenon of Sabbateanism, the cult, essentially the inverse Jewish cult of the Sabbatai Z. And if you think of Hillary's career and sort of the rumors that you've always heard about Hillary, I've always thought that there's some legitimacy. She is legitimately evil. I mean, to a point where it becomes religious with her. Do
you know that she wrote her thesis on Rules for Radicals, which was basically dedicated to Lucifer.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So it would make sense that she knows something like that. I think she wrote that.
So this cult is essentially a Luciferian cult. I mean, it gets more extreme with Frankism in the 1700s, and you could still find Frankist names, but it led me to consider maybe she has more of a connection to these occultic or ancient families than just being a girl from the suburbs. There's always rumors that her father was a mob boss or involved with the Chicago mafia, but you sort of got to get picked for that type of work as well. Her appeal might have been something more along the lines that she belongs to a family with maybe Sabbatean origins or Frankist origins. And if you believe, some of the rumors, and I kind of do, the actual sort of Luciferian occultic, I don't know, sacrifices or whatever you want to call it, she might have, a legitimate interest in this kind of stuff. I know
she has very strange friends. There's no question about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Just having Podesta as your chief of staff is
right.
Pretty creepy. I mean, that's just one.
Yeah. Kabbalism. I think she's been accused of that, or admitted to that, or attending witch ceremonies. I would say there's something legitimately evil about her. But it's still a jump to get to that. She has the father with the firm, which seems to have Turkish origins, which is interesting. And a couple months ago, you sort of scour the internet for different things. One weird thing did finally pop up for me. I think it was on a Google search. Somebody is selling, and this might be related. This is just strange to begin with. Somebody is selling fabric from Roderick Fabrics, her father's company. These bolts of basically upholstery. They were selling them through an antique appraiser called West Point. I believe it's West Point. Anyway, it's displayed if you do a Google search, or a couple months ago if you did. There's a full description of what this fabric is, and it's from Roderick Fabrics. It's really the only reference I've ever seen to Roderick, other than in her book. And it's essentially something you would put on a chair or make draperies out of. But the connection to back to Turkey is the artist who made the print was a gentleman named let me just get his name correct, Leo Yeni, who happened to be from Thessaloniki, Greece, which is where the sort of the last holdout of the Sabbateans was before World War I, and with some left over by World War II. But this Yeni person, he was a legitimate artist, and he moved to New York. His family appears to be this from Sabbatean, the Donme. So there's an interesting connection between her father and a legitimate Donme or Sabbatean family.
Right, they went underground, right? So they still retain their Judaism, but presented something different to the public. Right,
and it. What makes the Sabbatean interesting? It was a very big religion. It's been sort of swept under the rug up until very recently. I'm 53 years old. I never heard about it until 3 years ago. It had 500,000 or 1 million adherents at one point, and as recently as World War I, between the war years, there was 30. The population in Turkey, especially around Thessaloniki, was estimated to be around 30 or 40,000 people. So this cult never went away, and you see possible traces of the cult in different symbols. One of the more well-known ones, which I think it kind of ties a lot together, is the temple of Epstein's temple, with the blue and the white and the dome on top. It's said to be a replica of a bathhouse in Turkey, and it is. It's representative of a Turkish bathhouse in Aleppo, Syria, once part of the Ottoman Empire. and Aleppo, Syria was a Sabbatean stronghold for many years. It wasn't built by the Sabbateans; it was built before that, the one in Turkey, or the one in Aleppo, Syria. But by the time the Ottomans had taken over, and this cult had sort of made its way through the Middle East and Europe, it appears that was probably one of their properties, and that's how Epstein sort of was. That's what Epstein designed his strange-looking temple after.
Right, very odd connection, right? So it's still around, and it was a huge schism within Judaism, right? This whole
Right.
Zvi and the whole claim of Sabbateanism for people, they were going to try to bring about the Messiah by engaging in sin, right? So that's the
Right.
whole idea, is
Right.
through subverting the religion, they were going to bring the end of the world, so their Messiah would return. It didn't happen, but it gave them license to kind of engage in every sin that the Bible prohibits. So it's kind of these were heretics within Judaism,
Right.
Zvi and Frank.
And it never really, you could argue it never really went away. There's certainly some families in the U.S. that are from Justice Brandeis was actually an admitted Frankist.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's and he's from that. I believe he's from Germany. His family's originally
Eastern
from
Europe.
Germany.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other ones. The Slidell family of Louisiana. It was a Senator Slidell was a Confederate, but he was a senator from Louisiana. When the Civil War started, he became a diplomat for the Confederate States, and the Slidells are related to the Commodore Matthew Perry family, which is originally Perea. That's a Portuguese name. Also related to the Belmonts, August Belmont, which has the Rothschild connections. Belmont was originally Belmonte, also a Portuguese name. In the Portuguese names, the original source of this wealth seems to be the Dutch East India Company. I'm really getting into the weeds here, but you do have these, families with possible Sabbatean or Frankist connections in the United States going back not all that long ago, or at least significantly, alive significantly longer than after everybody thought they had sort of petered out or died. So
do you know if there's any African connection to these guys? I mean, one of the interesting things about the Confederates is there were a lot of Jews involved in the Confederacy. Like one guy what was his name? I think it was Judah. Benjamin, yeah, Benjamin Judah. Judah P. Benjamin was one, kind of a high-ranking. That was Louisiana as well, right? Yeah, he's Jewish.
I mean, the Confederacy was, they got a lot of their money from the Rothschild banks. Slidell was actually the reason why Slidell, I think it's John Slidell. One of his more famous acts was he was broke through the barricades in New Orleans and was sailing off to Paris in order to secure financing for the Confederate side.
Interesting.
The war, and sort of waylaid in Havana. It's kind of an interesting story. I actually really want to get obscure. He did secure financing for the Confederacy through the issuing of bonds that were collateralized by cotton. The underwriting house was Erlinger and Company, and if you remember your Wayfair conspiracy, or I don't even know if I can call it a conspiracy. Wayfair was
oh yeah, the website.
Yeah, the website with the traffic.
Right.
One of their main shipping hubs is in Erlinger, Kentucky. It's named after the same family.
Interesting.
But that's maybe really reaching, but I mean, just back to Hillary, it's you start to see through this sort of connection with Yeni. There's a mosque in Thessaloniki, and I believe in Istanbul, named after the family. And what they were Donme, so they on the outside they would pretend to be Muslims, but inside they were the Sabbateans. And then there's other sects who pretend to be Jewish, but they're really Sabbateans. And then I think there's a decent amount of evidence to suggest that the Frankists sort of wrapped everybody together, Christians and Jews, but the underlying religion was basically Sabbatean or Luciferianism.
Interesting.
Yeah.
John asks, is Trump connected to these families? Do you know anything about that?
I've never seen him connected to anything, and I've looked into his, family background. I really don't see anything there. I mean, he seems like they didn't exactly show up in this country with all that much money. It doesn't look like. You see some of these really wealthy families, when they do show up in the United States, they already seem to be well connected. Even some of the original Virginia families or Massachusetts families, they all seem to come, have connections maybe to the Dutch East India Company or Dutch West India Company. And I've never really seen Trump.
But Trump has kind of he's much more friendly towards Jews, maybe than other people. At least his son is Jewish, and I think his kids
Kushner, right?
Yeah,
but I think one of the issues is you have the Sabbateans, which were essentially anti-Jews or the inverse of Judaism,
right? Yeah,
and there's a lot of they don't get along, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's a schism. It's a schism within Judaism.
And there was through the 1600s, they were essentially Shabbatai and then the later Frankists, to the extent the local Jewish authorities or Jewish rabbis could oust them from whatever they were doing and prevent them, because they gave everybody a bad name, essentially.
Right.
And so they were not welcome anywhere. So that's why they went underground, and really hid who they were. I mean, there's argument that the Rothschilds were Sabbatean as well.
Interesting. I think they influenced the Illuminati. There were ideas that bled over into other things, so it wasn't just self-contained within Judaism.
Right. Really, and I mean, the Frankists, they played both sides. They would go, they would go tell the Catholic, the bishop, that the Jews were doing so and so, and the bishop would see if they had to crack down, and then they would get in the middle of these conflicts between traditional Orthodox Jews and the Catholic Church, and sort of play off both sides, almost like what you see, in the 20th century, where you have these families sort of playing, financing the North and financing the South in the Civil War, or financing Hitler on one side and the Allied powers on the other side.
The Rothschilds are famous for that. I mean,
right.
they make money off of war. You probably find a Rothschild hand behind Ukraine, a huge banking hand, because of the amount of cash flow. Just the cash flow is extraordinary.
Right.
Over $100 billion so far. So. Sandra asks, Jews are the chosen people in the Bible, so are these people doing wild things in Israel, crypto, Sabbatean, or Frankist Luciferians, in your opinion, based on all the research you've done?
Yeah, I mean, there's a school of thought that sort of this craziness that's going on in Israel right now is so this small minority of Sabbateans are sort of running the show, creating havoc. I mean, it's because it's not benefiting anybody. It's not, it makes people choose sides, right? And it's having the desired split that you would expect, both on the left is split and then the right is split about what's going on. I mean, there's to the extent that maybe the Israeli government knew that there was going to be an attack, there's an argument that these evil forces within the Israeli government let it happen.
Right.
But meanwhile, most of the population and probably most of the government, most of your average Israeli soldier don't know any of this. They just, they're there for the fight.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a war of choice. I think 10-7 was it was very beneficial to Netanyahu, strangely. Yorba asks, how can we trust Trump with his connection to Kushner? Kushner is already talking real estate opportunities in Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily trust Kushner either. I mean, he's overdeveloped the Jersey Shore, and his father was quite the creep as well. It's my understanding that Kushner's out. I mean, I could say that about any number of Trump's people. I mean, Barr certainly has his deep state connections.
No doubt. CIA. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
the privileged schools too, right?
What was
the same school Epstein went to, right? What was it called?
Right. And there's any number of them. Ray. I mean, he has not been, or Pompeo. I mean, that's probably a different show, but I think there's probably a bigger plan afoot.
They don't. All those old school people, they don't ever like Trump. They never Mueller and the old kind of family.
And that's what's interesting. They don't like him. So if Kushner,
he's really a nouveau riche for them. He's a Burroughs nouveau riche, pompous guy to them. I think.
Yeah,
they find it very offensive. Yeah,
and they've never liked him. There's the idea that he was that Trump was an FBI informant back in the 70s and 80s when he was building his hotels in Atlantic City. I could kind of see that. I think something bigger is happening here than really I could understand. Not to defend Trump, but I think from the amount of people that seem to hate him and seem to have an issue with what he's doing, he must be doing something right because they've been after him. This is the only reason I got interested in this. They've been after him since day one, to the extent, not the normal partisan stuff where you have a left-wing New York Times go after George W. Bush because that's the part that they're supposed to play. This seems more
cutthroat, like they really want to destroy him. Yeah,
like they really want to destroy him. Not just playing the part of the antagonistic press,
right.
But
it's
really
not for show.
Yeah, they need to get rid of him for some reason.
Yeah, he's too much rocking the boat. Like these old, just like it said, it's a syndicate, and it doesn't like to be disturbed.
Right.
I think that's really it. It's like we've got a very comfortable thing. We've got our own islands. We've got our own estates. We've got our own clubs. And our children are going to, it's just like George Bush said in the 1990 speech. It's like to ourselves and future generations. He's talking about to all his buddies in Congress, not to the U.S. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's saying we're going to keep this on the inside for us. And that's my promise to you. And I'll go along with everything.
Right. And I don't just think it's the clubs and the fancy, dinners you get to go to. I think the legitimately sources of cash flow from some that these families rely upon. You'll never know that they're ultimately the beneficiaries of cocaine coming out of Colombia or heroin coming out of South Vietnam or Laos. That ultimately that's I think those are the franchises that are really getting disturbed.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that. Like if you say you're going to smaller government, these guys, a lot of these contracts that go in with these administrative bodies are in the tens or hundreds of millions for software or things like that. And so these guys are getting that taxpayer funds. And then they say that the Bidens have their stake in so many different parts of the government where they're getting to dip their beak on all these contracts and things like that through third-party companies in Delaware, right? Delaware is the famous state where all this happens, right? You can have like a billion shell companies if you want.
Right.
So Biden was probably installed for that reason. Like, hey, cover this up, do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. Well, there might be a guy. If we're going to go down there, I mean, he's almost so inept. The deep state has lost so much ground from his ineptness. It's almost purposeful. It almost looks purposeful the way he was put in there.
Yeah,
he's done more to destroy the deep state than Trump ever could. From his just incompetence.
You can through incompetence, right? Like he's like show like the the mask is off. Like, this is such a joke. Like
Right.
that. I think that you people just don't have any respect for the federal government. I think his
Right.
real approval rating is like in 10%. Like, I think
Right.
all that stuff, like he's at 40, is just complete hogwash. Just like he got 181 million votes. It's like in your face, insane.
Yeah.
But what have you been working on? I mean, can you talk about what's on your website and what you've been working on in the past and what you have plans for the future?
Yeah. Since I do live in New Jersey, I do like to look into this Murphy family and their connections to the deep state. And I sort of go where the fun is. Sometimes UFOs, they're always fun. There's a I'm not a real big believer in the UFO phenomena is legitimately aliens from another planet. I think our government uses the UFO phenomena to sort of hide some of their own crimes, and it just is an example. But there's other examples. In 1965, it was discovered that 300 pounds of weapons grade uranium was missing from a company called NUMEC in Apollo, Pennsylvania. It's known as the Apollo Affair. Right? And what nobody seems to have put together, I'm not saying I have, but it is coincidental. About two months later, so this would be fall of 1965, the Kecksburg UFO lands in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, which is about 30 miles south.
Wow.
Sort of a famous UFO incident. And, the incident involved, Army trucks and guys with Geiger counters and, don't cross the line tape. And everybody's, get away from the area. Rumor has it the UFO crash and, they're recovering whatever the bodies or retrieving the wreckage. But, I think it's probably like other incidents was a staging ground to cover up the crime of stealing uranium, weapons grade uranium at the plant.
Right, a huge crime, very important. Yeah, it all went to Israel, right? It went to
Israel. So you can pretty much declare anything super duper top secret if you say a UFO crashed here, and basically the president can answer.
It's like a fake for a cover up to cover up stuff, right?
Right.
Put people on the ground, monitor things.
Right. I mean, Roswell might have been the same because somehow the Russians were able to detonate a bomb 2 years after Roswell. Right? They didn't have any infrastructure to make anything. I don't know.
It was a tour to. I mean, it was like an incredible achievement, right? To go from dropping on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in 1945 to them having a whole nuclear program.
Right.
For them, it was like a espionage triumph. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you read Sullivan, I think his name John Sullivan. There was technology transfers to the Soviets all the whole time, even after the war, because you have to keep the Cold War going. You just ended World War II and that cash cow. Now you need a Cold War. Right? You can't have a Cold War if the Soviets don't have a bomb. So if you could just maybe steal enough uranium for them to detonate their own and cover up with the UFO crash right near Los Alamos, then there's other incidents as well. There's Fort Monmouth incidents.
The Russians have been the greatest beneficiary to the deep state and the military-industrial complex that the country could ever ask for, like a Hamas, like an American Hamas. Just blaming on the Russians, and we got to stop these Russians, and there's communists everywhere.
They're coming from.
They use it all the time, yeah. So I mean, it really benefited the American global empire since after World War II. Like, we got to go into Iran, their communist influence. Russian influence, and then let's go into Indonesia.
Without firing a shot. I mean, Central America during the 80s. It was.
There you go. Everywhere. South America, Central America, Asia, Middle East, maybe Africa, right?
Right.
Lumumba. I mean, really, the achievements were extraordinary. And I've said this before, but they really out-Nazi'd the Nazis. They had a much better PR program. The Nazis were like lame. They were stupid. They looked like thugs. you know. So the Americans said we're bringing civilization and Christianity while they just horrible stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's what I'm working. You know, I'm trying to get my website a little up and going a little bit better than I have a real job, so I don't get to keep all this keep up on this all the time.
Right.
And
where is the best place to contact you if people have follow-up questions or anything?
Yeah, on Twitter. Twitter was probably best. It's I wrote my. Hold on a second.
I think I have it somewhere too. Where is it?
I think my Twitter's handle is right. Oh, it's right on my caption at DNews 2000.
It's on your caption. It's on your caption, not on the website though, right? It's somewhere else.
No, but I'll put it up there too. Twitter seems to be
there
the
it
best.
is. It's DNews 2022.
Yeah,
it's at DNews 2022. That's your hashtag. That's your.
As Twitter's become freer and freer, I'm finding I'm getting a lot more mileage out of my Twitter than anything else.
Likewise, it shows how I was totally suppressed on every other platform.
Yeah,
it just wasn't worth it for me to be on there. I also was getting nanny state. I wasn't the right guy for this because I talk about too many issues that aren't middle of the road. But this isn't acceptable. Here's your next strike. This is medical misinformation. And just the constant, it's intended to wear you down. And YouTube did me really dirty. They just, I think they actually waited till I had put a lot of content on there to take my side away. That was the intent, was trying to a humiliation or really hamstring you. And so I don't even know my real follower count. That's not organic. When they take stuff away from you, how do you really know? Especially if you're being throttled. I mean, they caught in the Twitter files. They're just throttling everybody, putting things on their site. The whole thing was rigged. That's why I quit Twitter. Why would I even do that?
Yeah, I mean, I had given up on it, and that's why the website it sort of slowed down because I would get traffic from Twitter, but then Twitter started not working, so I wasn't getting. I'll have to redo some of this stuff, but there's some extra articles on there. One popular one is. And I'll leave it at that. Popular one is Jeff Bezos' grandfather started DARPA, and nobody seems to.
Oh wow!
so
nobody talks about that either, right?
What?
Yeah, Trump's uncle was heavily involved in deep state stuff and looked through the files of Tesla and all that stuff. Some of that stuff they forget, how tech oriented a lot of these people are.
Right.
But Bezos is probably a chosen.
Bezos seems to be sure. His grandfather also worked for the Atomic Energy Commission when a lot of that uranium went out the back door.
Wow. I know Angleton facilitated that. It was okayed from the top. Angleton was very pro-Israel and facilitated. I mean, kind of very illegal stuff. But those guys at the CIA got away with literal murder. I mean, they were what they achieved was just incredible, man. Wow. Outside of the realm of common morality, they just threw it out the window. We can get away with this. It's really something else. Anyway, thanks a lot. Great to talk with you again. It was too long. And people check out, I'll put a link to the other one we did about Gibson Island. I think it's important. And a lot of people who aren't wealthy or from the East Coast or one of these families probably find it really interesting what these guys do over tennis, It's really much more, it's a bonding thing too, right? So it's different than a foundation. It's you're socially bonding with other people who are very powerful and connected. And I think that's crucial. So anyway.
Very good.
Bill, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, stay there.